Hey people, Indrid here. Well, my friends, we made it. Someone's gone and done it. Yes, Dawn of War 4 is happening. We have willed it into existence, I think, like a bunch of rowdy orcs. This is coming from King Art Games out of Germany via Deep Silver and PlayOn, who have sponsored this video, by the way, so thanks to them. And I got to play it. I've had access to like a pre-alpha demo for a little while, where I'm able to play as them Space Marine fellas, so this will be some information, as well as my early thoughts, impressions, hopes and fears about the upcoming title. By now, there should have been like an announcement trailer and stuff, but I'm not sure what, if any, info they dumped alongside it. So I may be going over stuff that's been already revealed and discussed and things. Also note that I was not able to capture any footage from the build I played. So you'll be seeing footage that was provided to me, so apologies if it's a bit repetitive or maybe not at all related to what I'm talking about, but it's what I've got. So let's get into it. First, some basics. I mean, what is this thing? Well, it's an RTS, I'm happy to report. I don't think that was necessarily a guarantee in 2025. They could have tried to do something weird with it. But thankfully, it's a pretty traditional RTS mechanics-wise, or at least traditional for a Dawn of War game. We'll get into more of that later. Release date, all we know so far is 2026. If I had to guess, it'll be March, April kind of time. End of the first quarter. That's based on, you know, time between announcement and potential release. This will give them 7 to 8 months to get it over the line. It avoids the often kind of dead summer release period and the super busy, crowded winter period as well. Also, I think every Dawn of War title has released around this time, I think, including expansions and stuff. Not that it's being developed or published by the same guys, but I think this window makes kind of sense for an RTS. We'll see though. So, content now. Well, a pretty good amount, I'd say. We have 4 factions: Space Marines, Orcs, Necrons, and for the first time in a Dawn of War title, Adeptus Mechanicus get in there. A cool lineup, I think. Very glad and grateful to see 4 factions in, I think, a Warhammer 40k RTS with so many beloved factions and sub-factions and stuff. It's a good amount. And you do see like RTS games launching with 2, which seems nuts to me. I think Space Marines and Orcs are kind of a no-brainer here. They're iconic. Necrons have that unique look, so I can see why they were put in. And then you have the Adeptus Mechanicus, kind of the wild card choice. Very interesting. I'm kind of sad not to see any Chaos fellas, but first DLC maybe? We can hope. Each of these factions gets a campaign, by the way. And, I mean, the presentation they gave didn't give away any narrative stuff, but they did say, expect to see Cronus involved in some way. This is the planet that was in Dawn of War Dark Crusade. And I think canonically, well, I assume so, it was brought back under Imperial control by the Blood Ravens, and then the Inquisition were like, well, these fellas seem a bit weird, and started to investigate, which of course we saw play out in Dawn of War 2. Oh, and they said there's like 40 minutes or something of cinematic cutscenes, which is a huge amount. They're not messing around, these guys. Aside from that, we get the Last Stand mode in at release. This is an obvious nod to the Last Stand mode in Dawn of War 2, which was this wave survival kind of thing where 3 players control a single hero each and try to survive the waves of death. It was pretty popular, actually, I think. I played it a ton. It was very fun. No other details were given on this, so it may play a bit differently. I think there's a lot of room to expand here, though, with like full-on, perhaps procedurally generated co-op shenanigans and missions and stuff with some meta progression. I mean, speculate away in the comments and let me know what you'd like to see. Very glad this is included, though, on release. There's plenty of Dawn of War fans, or even just Warhammer 40k fans who don't want to play PvP stuff. As for PvP, I mean, it's going to be in there. I got no details about what form it'll take. Again, they may have released some info on this alongside the trailer. I assume there's going to be 1v1s, of course, and surely some kind of team game size, whether it's 2v2 or 3v3 or even 4v4, maybe all of them. Would be great to see a good amount of maps on release. You know, matchmaking support, private lobbies, perhaps even a map editor. Oh, and important for me personally, I'd really like to see replay support on release, please. Every other Dawn of War title has shipped with one, and I can't cast games without them. Aside from that, I do think it's a pretty strong feature for an RTS. I mean, what do you guys think? Does the average player care about replays? King Art Games' previous RTS was a game called Iron Harvest from 2020. Was a pretty well regarded game, and I bought it. I just never covered it on the channel because it never got replay support. I kept waiting and waiting for it, but never came. I mean, I have no idea how easy or difficult it is to implement, but again, really hoping to see it. Oh, and for those wondering, there was an army painter button in the demo I played. It didn't do anything, but it was there, and it is something you'd expect to see in a Dawn of War title. On to my impressions of what I played and some thoughts on that then. This is probably going to be long and rambling. Firstly, my general impression of not only what I played, but also what was presented. Strong, good, positive. I mean, they specifically called out the community's not so great response to Dawn of War 3, so I think some lessons were learned there. They also spoke of wanting to be a spiritual successor of sorts to the original Dawn of War, which I think is smart, even though I personally prefer Dawn of War 2. It's safe to say that the original Dawn of War is the favourite for most people out there. You know, 20 years later, it really resonated. And I, of course, did love the original too as my favourite game until Dawn of War 2 released. So those are good signs. It is, of course, easy to talk a good game, though, innit? And release some cool-looking footage. And it does look freaking good. I also have to remember to kind of shake my brain a bit and temper my excitement at a new Dawn of War title being confirmed. I will stick with my initial optimism, though, and underlying excitement at what I saw and heard and played. As for the gameplay itself, well, I played what the build called a skirmish mission. I'm not sure if this was a potential campaign mission or these standalone skirmish missions are a thing they are doing. It did have in-game cutscenes and voice lines and stuff though, so I don't think it was just created specifically for the demo. I was controlling the good old Blood Ravens with Cyrus as my commander. He was a scout sergeant in the 4th Company in Dawn of War 2 and controllable character there. I was facing off against orcs with some Imperial Guard assistance sometimes and some Necron action at the end. Probably needless to say, but you are controlling the modern Space Marine stuff. I mean, I say modern, I think 8th edition was like 9 years ago or something now, but yeah, it's Primaris Marines and Redemptor Dreadnoughts and that kind of thing. Even those hover tanks, Gladiators and Repulsors they're called, which is going to take some getting used to for me. I'm so used to the Firstborn stuff that, I mean, hover tanks for Space Marines just seems a bit out there. So base building, innit? It's in. The Space Marines can call in buildings anywhere on the map and they auto-construct, so you're not microing builder units around. For me, this is a plus. It's just not an RTS staple that I want to be doing in a Dawn of War title really myself. I want to be getting to the combat and the character of the units kind of thing. But I'm sure there will be those that miss it. I suspect, but cannot confirm, that the other factions also operate without builder units. I would assume they do. They do have some other mechanics though. The Orcs, like the Space Marines, can build everywhere, and I think they are kind of designed to swarm the map with their presence kind of thing. The Necrons can only build, I believe, in their specific terrain that they spread around, which also grants their units some health regen, so a very strong defensive faction out the gate. They also have some teleportation stuff going on, I believe. The Adeptus Mechanicus have this Noosphere network thing, which you can think of as like grim, dark, future Bluetooth that they spread around with these special structures. If this network is broken and then like made non-contiguous through stuff being destroyed, I think the isolated structures still function in some way, but they get kind of some kind of debuff or downside. Not 100% clear on that. Oh, and there's also global like meta ability stuff. Space Marines have command points, which they get from kills and all that can be used for stratagems, or stratagems, I guess. The build I played had 3. One, the cheapest one, gave a whole bunch of XP to a unit, because units do have veterancy. One that was like a Thunderhawk cluster bomb strike, which is pretty damn effective. And the last one is a full-on orbital bombardment. Orcs have a war mechanic thing going on, which I think they can passively gain by building war banners all over the place. The point is, though, that we have asymmetrical factions with different gameplay and a feel, which I love and should be a priority, I think, for a Dawn of War title. Big fan of this. So, base building, check. We also have the capturing of points for resources, requisition and power. Thank goodness we aren't mining like a special space metal or something. And yes, you can build listening posts on the requisition points. and upgrade them to gather more and like have built-in defenses and stuff. You can also build additional generators on the power points, but from what I saw, they don't have their own inbuilt defenses. You need to take care of that yourself. So as I'd expect, the Space Marines had structures for producing infantry, advanced infantry, vehicles, and also tech upgrade stuff, as well as defensive buildings. The Space Marines had 2 of these, a turret and a Hammerfell bunker, and you can upgrade them, by the way. And yes, you can drop them anywhere, so chuck them down to help you defend your points, I guess. There is no power management or tier system in the build that I saw, so if you just have the resources, you can build the stuff. There was also this structure called like a Thunderhawk relay, which apparently allows you to shuttle units around for the Space Marines, but I couldn't work out how to build it. It always seemed to be locked. Maybe it was just missing from the build I had, or I was missing something obvious, I'm not sure. As a faction in combat, Space Marines are pretty much designed as you'd expect, I say. On the meta scale, they're kind of a smaller amount of more powerful units generally, and I did feel that when mincing through the orcs kind of thing. They can also spend more resources to load units into drop pods, which I love as a feature. They can have up to 5 of them loaded and ready to go. And yes, the drop pods do have storm bolters on them, but they seem to do very little damage from what I saw, balance on that. The storm bolters, that is. And the Space Marine infantry have this thing called this built-in Armor of Contempt mechanic, which the commander Cyrus also had, where they gain this overshield whenever they kill a model, lose a model, or gain veterancy. I'm not sure if it has some kind of internal cooldown on it maybe, but it really helps them deal with the greater numbers, and it felt quite powerful. The UI is quite detailed and complex actually. There's a lot going on. We do get a unit bar across the bottom of the screen, which I'm a big fan of having in an RTS. Allows you to quickly select and see the status of your units. You can of course assign groups to them with hotkeys and stuff. And units can have abilities and upgrades and all that. As an example, the Intercessors, which is kind of, for those that don't know, they're kind of Primaris tactical marines. They start with bolters and can chuck a grenade as an active ability. You can also give them an underslung grenade launcher, which fires automatically while they attack, separate from the grenade they can throw, which, does damage in an area. And from what the tooltip says, perhaps has some decent armor pen, more on armor later. But it doesn't end there. You can also equip the squad with Stalker bolters, which fire slower but have more armor piercing, or auto bolt rifles, which have a shorter range but are more effective against infantry, it said. I'm not sure how exactly, whether they just do more base damage or maybe have a higher fire rate or something. On top of that, you can equip one member of that squad with a full-on melee loadout, either a hand flamer and a power sword, which sounds very fun, or a plasma pistol and a thunderhammer for more armor piercing. So yeah, lots of options for some of the units. Also, they have brought back attaching commanders to units, which I always liked about Dawn of War 1. This means you can control them as a single unit and also activate abilities and upgrade them and stuff from a single panel. However, I did notice that when you attach a commander to a unit, the unit card then gave you the armor and armor piercing value of only the commander. Unless I missed it, I'd like to also retain that info of the squad on the unit card somewhere. I mean, eventually you'll just memorize these values, but I'd like to have that info all on there. So speaking of armor then, let's get into that. In Dawn of War 2, you had weapon families with damage types, which then interact with armor types, and that's before even considering accuracy and stuff. It worked great as a system, made for a great game, but it was perhaps overly complicated, and the whole thing is very obfuscated from the player, which makes it difficult for newcomers for sure. I think it worked well though in that game. In Dawn of War 4, from what I can gather, you have a much simpler system where units have an armor rating and also an armor piercing value for the weapons, both of which are clearly displayed when you select them. I guess if a unit has more than one weapon, I assume it shows the armor piercing value of the greatest one, whatever's highest. The tooltip says that unless the armor piercing value is greater than the armor value, i.e. not the same, you'll deal reduced damage. So armor piercing of 5 or lower versus 5 armor reduced your damage. It unfortunately does not give specifics about how much less damage it deals. It's also not clear whether this system has a hard breakpoint or staggered breakpoints. I mean, do you deal the same damage whether the AP is equal or 5 points lower? Is it the same? Or does it get progressively less as the AP value goes down? For example, if the armor value is 6 and I'm attacking with an AP 6 weapon, maybe it'd do 20% less damage, and then an additional 20% less for each AP value lower you are, up to a maximum of minus 80% perhaps? Or is it that all of those values deal the same amount less, which is like 50 or 75% less? I'd much prefer the former, the more staggered reductions. I think that gives value to each point of armor and each point of armor piercing, rather than having these hard breakpoints. Then you can even have like over penetration mechanics if you have double the armor value or something, or rather double the armor piercing value of the armor. And maybe that's what the system is already. We'll have to see. As for accuracy, it was kind of hard to tell. I mean, I didn't see any big weapons miss a shot against a big target or anything. But when it comes to bolter fire, I'm not sure if everything just hits, unless there's cover involved or what. A big system I haven't touched on yet is melee combat. They mentioned in the presentation that one thing people often spoke highly of in Dawn of War titles was the sync kill animations. These are, for those that don't know, elaborate kind of cinematic synced melee kill animations that could sometimes trigger. For Dawn of War 4, they take this further, where all melee combat in the game uses synced melee animations between units. There will be no, or perhaps very little, of like just models just standing around in place swinging their weapon. They've developed a system where every single unit that could have a melee attack will have synced melee animations against another. They mentioned like 10,000 possible permutations that they'd have to find a solution for. Absolutely mental. And what a fantastic thing for them to commit to. I assume they have various matched melee animation based on like the general size of the units maybe, and then a bunch of unique ones thrown in there too. And it delivers. I mean, watching it in action, even at this early stage, was awesome to see. Some of them are quick, like you'd see a Blade Guard veteran just quickly run through an Orc Boy with his blade. But there's also dismemberment and all sorts. They also specifically said that you can interrupt these animations to keep that feeling of control of your stuff. So yeah, thumbs up is all I can say about that. What a fantastic melee system they've come up with and committed to. As for unit control in general, it definitely feels snappier than Dawn of War 2 does. A criticism about Dawn of War 2 is that the units can feel sluggish, especially to other RTS players. This is because units in Dawn of War 2 have lower than usual rotation rates for an RTS, and they have acceleration values and stuff. This gives some really nice weight to the units, I think, and kind of grounded the feel of the game. And it's also a nice parameter to have to balance and make units feel unique and have character and stuff. It feels great in Dawn of War 2. I think as you up the scale, and trust me, Dawn of War 4 ups the scale, it perhaps becomes a bit more problematic to have units controlling like this, and you need them to be a bit snappier. I mean, to be clear, it's not like Marines in Dawn of War 2 take like a full second to turn around and in Dawn of War 4 they instantly turn on a dime or anything, but you can feel the difference. Oh yeah, and you can reinforce units in the field for a cost and retreat them, including vehicles. You can retreat vehicles even. You can even repair vehicles in the field, again for a cost, but they kind of become unusable and lock in place while it's going on. They also have this system where you can draw a selection box with your right mouse button, and your units will attack everything in there in an apparently smart way. I assume this means they will try to engage appropriate targets based on armor piercing and armor values. I assume that's what that means. It means you can't give facing orders to units though, which I instinctively kept trying to do from Dawn of War 2, which in turn possibly means we won't get any like big setup weapons, which is a shame. I always enjoy infantry kind of lugging around a big old gun and then setting it up for some big booms, especially if we see some Imperial Guard added or Astra Militarum down the line. Cover. There is a cover system in Dawn of War 4 where you have cover objects that you interact with, like a barricade or a pile of sandbags maybe, and then one unit at a time can benefit and get some kind of protection. I'm not sure exactly what it is in terms of numbers. Cyrus, the Space Marine commander fella I had, does have an ability, Mortis Round I think it was called, on one of his guns that mentioned ignoring cover, so direct counters are going to be a thing. Perhaps flamers and stuff will counter them in general, you'd expect maybe. Again, this is a much simpler system than Dawn of War 2, which had individual models interacting with individual cover objects with a specific facing and even 2 types of cover value. I mean, Dawn of War 2 system is great, big fan of it, works fantastically with that smaller scale. Again, when you scale things up, that system becomes maybe pretty close to unworkable, or at least very difficult, I think. The amount of objects and stuff you'd need around the map to accommodate that amount of units in terms of cover would be a bit mental. So a simpler system, but I think it makes a lot of sense with the type of RTS and the scale they're going for. So let's talk about scale then and put it into some context. Dawn of War 2 has a population limit of 100, where a 3-man tactical marine squad will occupy 15 of that population. In the Dawn of War 4 demo I played, I had a population limit of 300, and a 5-man intercessor squad occupied only 5 of that. You could have 60 intercessor squads with these numbers. I mean, these numbers are subject to change, and maybe they are intended to be completely different for PvP, who knows? But even if it's half as much, it's still a much larger scale. I mean, imagine that in a 3v3 or something. Now onto some of these smaller details and things I noticed, maybe with some nitpicking. Starting with something I missed, the reload animations from Dawn of War 2. I mean, it was really nice visual feedback for the player with regard to weapons having a cooldown time and stuff. But they are missing from Dawn of War 4. I mean, the whole shooting and weapon fire rate system is probably completely different and maybe it wouldn't make sense, but it was something I immediately noticed. Oh, and melter guns. There are Primaris eradicators who have, well, I guess they're melter rifles actually, not melter guns, but they fire them in these big bursts, kind of like the fusion guns from Dawn of War 2, instead of one powerful shot at a time, which is usually how they are depicted. But thinking now, maybe that's just what melter rifles are like. If anyone knows, let me know. Oh, another cool detail is bodies on the ground. Not only do they stay, well, some of them stay at least, but they retain physics and stuff. You can see Redemptor dreadnoughts like stomping around the bodies, crunching them to smaller pieces with blood gushing out, or even kicking them around as they move. Very nice touch. What else? Vehicles. I love the scale of the units and vehicles actually feeling and looking big and imposing. Vehicles in the previous titles, especially Predator tanks and stuff, always felt off with their scaling and felt way too small. I will say that Terminators look kind of small in this game, but I think that's because Terminators are always firstborn, right? And they'll be standing beside Primaris fellas. Yeah, so, and lastly, Cyrus had the same voice actor from what I could tell, which is awesome, or a very, very good sound-alike. Steve Blum is his name, and he did a bunch of voices in Dawn of War 2, including the Tech Marine and Warp Spider Exarch, I think, so maybe he's doing a bunch for Dawn of War 4. As for some concerns, I think straight away performance in a visually detailed RTS like this with a large scale is always going to be something we worry about as players. I hope they can lock that down. I'm 99% sure it's a Unity game, so DLSS and FSR was already in there even in this demo in terms of upscaling, and maybe they can get some frame gen in there for those that have it too. General lethality of stuff is also a potential concern. I thought the moment-to-moment combat actually felt very good with regards to time to kill and that kind of thing. It's the abilities I could see needing some adjusting. From what I could tell, it's very difficult, bordering on impossible to dodge stuff, like abilities that have been fired. The intercessor grenades, for example, have no fuse, and you directly target a squad, so maybe they even track, I don't know, because the Orc AI was not trying to dodge them. The Space Marine Thunderhawk cluster bomb thing was also very quick and hurt a lot, so I hope they can increase the lead time for these and some more visual indicators perhaps. Having stuff that has no counterplay and hurts you a lot never feels good. I mean, the intercessor grenades did have a pretty short range, so perhaps just like distance management is your counter there, but the stratagem stuff is not so simple. Obviously this stuff can be adjusted before and after release, but lethality and counterplay is important in an RTS. Well, that's my rambling video over. I'm sure I forgot a bunch of stuff. Let me know in the comments your thoughts, and if you have any questions I can answer. I mean, ideally about Dawn of War 4 would be good. Thanks for watching, and to everyone who has supported this channel over the years. I have no idea how it's still going, but it looks like this servitor will not be decommissioned and grinded up just yet. Thanks to all those who whispered quietly into the warp and made Dawn of War 4 a reality. I mean, I sure did. And I've never asked this before, but consider hitting the like button because it seems to please the machine spirit in it. I'll see you guys in the grim darkness next time.